Earlier this week, a minister friend posted a screenshot of a tweet on Facebook. That's not a 21st century statement. And this screenshot of a tweet that they posted on Facebook said, just a reminder that Mary Oliver's own answer to her question, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life, was to stroll idly through the fields, noticing things. The question, out of context, could appear to be about achieving more. It's not. And the question is often taken out of context to make us feel like we need to achieve more. I commented, "Thank you for this reminder," because I needed it. We all do, probably. So of course I had to share it with you. But at the time, I was not even thinking of preaching this week. I got to fill in last minute, and I just needed it for myself at that point, for the same basic reason that I sought out, and after a 4-week wait from the library, started reading the current New York Times bestseller, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. And that reason is, I think I'm having a midlife crisis. I can hear your laughter over your computer screens. This baby face having a midlife crisis? How quaint, you must be thinking. But I'm dead serious. I turn 39 in a couple of months, so 40 is right around the corner, staring me in the face. The midpoint of an average human lifespan. 2,000 of my 4,000 weeks. It's natural that it makes me, and most of us, take inventory, if somewhat embarrassingly cliche. That's where the title of the book comes from, and its basic premise, 4,000 weeks. That's all we get. Most of us, if we're lucky enough to live in a society with decent care and access to food and water, not all of us, though. It's not guaranteed. Some of us get 2,000 weeks, some 1,000, some 100, some a day. But if we live to be 80 years old, we get 4,000 weeks. And in contemporary Western culture, we spend most of that time preparing for the next set of weeks rather than experiencing the ones we're in. And that's not just my midlife crisis talking, that's a key point of Berkman's book. Most of us have an extremely difficult time, somewhat by human nature, but largely by acculturation, facing two facts. One, we will die sooner rather than later, and none of us knows when or how. Two, all of our best planning and preparation cannot save us from this fact. A few other key points that Berkman makes. Most of that planning and preparation is counterproductive because there will always be more to do than anyone can get done in a lifetime. And the harder we try to do so anyway, the less time we actually devote to the most important things in our lives. Work is rarely among them. Few of us will be the next Mozart, Socrates, Mother Teresa, or Nelson Mandela. There have only been a few dozen such people in the course of human history who left a mark on the world with their work. The course of human history has been astonishingly brief. 6,000 years of civilization, or to put it in perspective, 60 100-year lifetimes back to back, taking into account that in every generation, there have been at least one or two people who have lived that long and gotten 5,200 weeks. 60 people. The person who coined that analogy said, that's as many people as I squeeze into my living room for a cocktail party. In the context of billions of years of space-time, humanity is the blink of an eye. Our dynasties and wars and pandemics, imperceptible blips on the radar screen, are 4,000 weeks, nanoseconds. We are specks of cosmic dust who believe ourselves to be planets and solar systems, if not the center of the universe. But no, we are tiny. Now, all of this may sound rather grim, but Berkman says, and I believe, that it is actually quite blessedly liberating. Because in the grand scheme of things, it is absolutely astonishing that we even happen at all. That we exist is a most unlikely phenomenon. That we get any time at all, let alone our frustratingly short 4,000 weeks or so, is a gift not to be squandered on achieving inbox zero or other Sisyphean tasks, or being consumed by Facebook for hours a day, or other wastes of this gift. In other words, facing the hard facts that we will die, we cannot stop it, and our lives will fade into obscurity, may sound like admitting defeat, and in a way it is, but in truth, it is surrendering to reality, and thus opening ourselves to its possibilities. Berkman compares this to taking the first step in Alcoholics Anonymous, wherein, paradoxically, the only way to conquer addiction is to surrender to one's powerlessness over it. It is only when we acknowledge our finitude, the fact that our lives are so short and thus so precious, that we force ourselves into a position of choosing how we want to spend them, rather than automatically going along with the way that we are used to spending them, acculturated or indoctrinated into spending them, etc. Berkman also notes that this confrontation with reality can often happen around midlife, when people are naturally reflective about how they've been spending their time and energy. On the note of spending time, we spend time as if it were a replenishable resource like money, but it's not. It's not even a resource at all. If anything, we are time, Berkman says, embodied and enfleshed. He's not the first to say this. Other philosophers have made the point, and he draws on them. But where we turn our attention, what we do with ourselves, is not just how we manage our time, but how we shape our lives. Our 4,000 weeks are our lives. They are us. And as embodied creatures, we live in cycles and seasons, with a time to be born, a time to die, and times for aging, times for changing, times for maturing, times for growth, times for sickness, times for health, and so on and so forth. The fact that we do not stay the same, or that things do not happen on the prescribed timelines that we set in our own minds, is not so much a problem as the way things are supposed to be. Time isn't a resource to be spent or a problem to be managed. It cannot be bought or sold. It isn't something to be squandered or hoarded. We cannot make more of it. We have what we have. And we cannot even really say that we have it so much as we are it. Time is both precious and fleeting. Time is what we pay attention to. Mary Oliver said she knew how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, to kneel down in the grass, to be idle and blessed, to stroll through the fields, which is everything she should have been doing with her limited time. And still, she found time, in fact, used some of the time that she was, I should say, to write poetry about it that changed and touched our hearts and minds. Maybe it will endure for generations. Maybe it will pass into obscurity like so many other great poets of generations past. It doesn't matter. She lived as she wished to live and showed others a path to doing so. Isn't that the best any of us can do? Life really is too short not to do what brings you meaning and joy. You do not have to save the world. As Mary Oliver says in another poem, Wild Geese, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Because, my friends, we are just soft animals like any other on this planet. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. For that connection, I would add, is what we have and what we are. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. And how marvelous is that the world goes on regardless of our problems, regardless of these issues that we face, big and small, regardless of the financial strife that, or the child rearing problems or marital problems or work stress or whatever it is that we have going on in our individual lives, regardless of the pandemics, the wars, the inhumanity that we visit upon each other, the world goes on. And the wild geese are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. What would make you feel most part of the family of things? What have you been neglecting in your quest to get everything done that can't ever possibly get done? What could you stop doing? It doesn't have to be a big change. I know for me, I think that it needs to be that whenever I come upon a point in my life, you know, whether it's a crisis of faith or a midlife crisis, rolling my eyes at myself, I think that I have to change everything. That in order to live my authentic truth, I have to, you know, become a minimalist and sell all my stuff and, you know, figure out a whole new way of being. But it doesn't have to be a big change. The therapist reminded me yesterday, actually, that 1 degree in the compass changes course, often drastically. You're traveling along in this direction, you shift 1 degree, takes you somewhere entirely different. And so, what is a small change that you can make? Can you make sure that you stop working entirely at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and that your time after that is entirely your family's or your own, or wherever you want to spend it? Can you do the equivalent of that in whatever schedule you have? Can you decide that maybe, watching 3 hours of Netflix a night is not actually what you want to do with your time? Maybe you'd like to pick up that guitar again. Maybe you'd like to spend some time with your friends. Maybe you'd like to learn to play Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I've been doing. So your wild and precious life can be what you make of it. It cannot be anything you wanted it to be. Hate to break it to you. When they told us when we were growing up that we could be anything we wanted to be, that wasn't exactly true. Our choices are limited to where and who we are, the context we were born in, the bodies we were born into, the society and time and place, the choices we've made up to this point. But the choices that we have ahead of us can make for a beautiful life, however short and precious. And so I ask you again, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It isn't a challenge. It's an invitation.